I think if I hear you call me Becky one more time, six-pack, I'm gonna pop your tops. All six of them.
Who are you?
Hey, this is Matt once again. This is another PayPal request from Wes. Thank you so much. This is for In Search of the Last Action Heroes from 2019, which is a documentary on action films, and particularly the 80s into the 90s. First off, if anyone wants to request any type of review, re-review, topic, reaction, pretty much any type, you send in requests either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. Now, In Search of the Last Action Heroes, it was a fun watch, to be honest. It was a fun watch. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes long. I guess you look at it as, what are you getting out of this? What are you wanting to get out of this? I knew going in that I was not going to find much stuff that I did not already know, because you're going through so many years and so many time spans, and they're not going to talk in depth. They're going to give you kind of they mention this movie, they say one or two things that you as a fan already know. I think if you're going into this, maybe if you know nothing about these action films, maybe if you're a newbie, maybe if you're someone who wants to show someone, introduce them to 80s, 90s action films, maybe this is the type of thing to showcase. But at the same time, this was something that I saw because someone uploaded on Dailymotion, to be fair. It was on Dailymotion one go. But this is something that you would have to get like either Indiegogo, Kickstarter, like one of those things. The only people that would do that are people that knew extensively about this stuff. So I don't really see them getting any new info, which is sad. And you're not really going to talk about films that no one talks about. You're not going to have in this stuff about Daylight or Eraser or Firewalker or Death Warrant. I'm just naming action films top of my head. And some that I'm a bit surprised they don't really go into, which I'll get to. I kind of sat back. I enjoyed it as a nice presentation. What do I mean by that? They got a lot of recognizable people. Mark Lester, who directed Commando. Mark Goldblatt, who edited many of these films like Rambo 2, and he also directed The Punisher. Sam Furstenberg, who did American Ninja. Paul Verhoeven, who did RoboCop. Shane Black. Alex Winter, just because he was in Death Wish 3. Scott Adkins, who I thought was the best guy and the best interviewee, I should say. Cynthia Rothrock, Bill Duke, Philip Ree. So, it's a nice collection of people. And the presentation, like the way it's edited, like you have clips of films and pictures of posters. Like, it's a very well edited thing. I could say documentary, where it's very colorful and you have some nice I would say synthesizer music that fits it well, and it was an easy watch for its running time. But like I said, if you really know these films, you're not really going to get a lot of it that you don't remember. Again, there's not really a lot of new info. A lot of times it's just, we mentioned this, we mentioned this movie. So like, it begins with talking a little bit about the westerns, a teeny bit of James Bond, just like referencing James Bond. They don't go in depth on any James Bond films though. A little bit of Bruce Lee. Again, they don't really go in depth on any Bruce Lee films. They pretty much say Bruce Lee was a badass. Like Eric Roberts, who's in this, Scott Adkins, Philip Ray, they say Bruce Lee's a badass. They mentioned Jaws for an instance, which I don't think Jaws is an well, okay, they mentioned Jaws, but your Raiders of the Lost Ark, they mentioned pretty much like Brian Tyler, who did the score for Rambo 4 and 5, about how he saved up to buy the VHS. You know, they mentioned The Road Warrior. You have Vernon Wells, that was cool. He talks about getting cast in The Road Warrior. They show his Steve from New York, but they never talk about Steve from New York. And that's why I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute. You're not even going to talk about State Plissken? You're not going to talk about Steve from New York? You just show it? Stuff like that, like, oh, well, that's a bit weird. Like, they don't talk about Steve from New York. I think they show it, but they're not talking about it at all. They don't talk about Steven Seagal. As much as I hate the guy, I would at least talk about Above the Law or Under Siege. They only reference Under Siege as in, well, in Die Hard, it was a cop, a regular guy. But then in Under Siege, you think he's a regular guy, but he's actually a Navy SEAL who knocked out his commanding officer, and like they downplay the film. I mean, this is a guy who talked shit about Steven Seagal lately a lot. But I like his early films, and I think Under Siege is pretty damn good, but so damn. But they didn't really talk about Steven Seagal. They barely talked about Van Damme, except Bloodsport, a teeny bit of Universal Soldier, and Street Fighter. Like, okay, so you're not going to talk about Time Cop. Hard Target, you just referenced that John Woo directed it. That's it. That's it. Really nothing on Hard Target, nothing on Time Cop, nothing on Tip Boxer, nothing on Lionheart, but you talk about fucking Street Fighter because they got Steven D'Souza who directed it. That's why. So on one hand, I understand, but I'm like, well, Sheldon Lettich is there too. You did talk about Double Impact, Lionheart. I mean, because Sheldon Lettich is interviewed, he directed some of those, and he helped write Rambo 3, and that was nice. That part. But anyway, First Blood. I like Michael Jai White's comment how, people make fun of Sly, but he's probably the most intelligent person when he walked into the room. And Eric Roberts, who worked with him on Expendables, is like, hey, Sly's the real deal. Matthias Hughes from My Common Piece, he talks about how Arnold, people laughed at him at the beginning, but he made it. Shane Black talks a little bit about 48 Hours. Beverly Hills Cop, all he mentioned is that Stallone was going to do it, but then he said no, and they offered it to Eddie. Lone Wolf McQuade, they mentioned. That's like the only Chuck Norris film. Well, no. Lone Wolf McQuade, they talk about how, Chuck Norris going to work for Canon Films, and they briefly mentioned Missing in Action. Those are the only Chuck Norris films mentioned. Sam Firstenberg talks about getting the job, Enter the Ninja, Revenge of the Ninja, a little bit. Like Enter the Ninja, he didn't work on it, but they mentioned that. And then Sam Firstenberg, he mentions how he got the job for Revenge of the Ninja. But again, because of the running time, because of the way it's done, you can't center on anything too much. And then a lot of stuff gets skipped. So, they mentioned Terminator, American Ninja, Jackie Chan just mentioned a little bit, Rambo 2, it's nice that got mentioned. Commando, they talk about how they had another guy for Vernon Wells' role. It didn't work out, so Vernon Wells got the part. Cobra, all they talk about Cobra is how Stan Bush had the song The Touch for Cobra, which I like the song, but it doesn't work for Cobra. So, Transformers, it worked better. They talk a little bit about Aliens, RoboCop, Predator. Shane Black, this made me dislike. Shane Black, there are times where I would watch his interview sprinkled out through it, and I'm like, the fuck are you talking about, Shane Black? Like, for example, in Predator, he doesn't like the line stick around. When Arnold, he didn't like that line. Lethal Weapon 2, about how his original script was somber. And he says, well, you know what, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do a comedy. You don't want to do a comedy, Shane Black? Then what the fuck was The Predator? I find it funny that he doesn't like Arnold saying stick around, and for Lethal Weapon 2, well, I didn't want to do a comedy, but you make a Predator film where a Predator gets a fucking arm that's been cut off with a thumbs up, and you put it into a slot. So the Predator fools a guy. He took an arm that had a thumb up that he cut off, and he slid it into this little window, so the guy's like, okay. But you don't like comedy, and you don't like stick around. To each their own. To each their own, buddy. That's just the way it fucking is, I guess. They talk about Die Hard. They don't go into any of the sequels. One guy mentions how, well, the Die Hard sequels were less and less good. I think the Die Hard sequels, other than Part 5, are pretty damn good, honestly. Rambo 3, I like the Sheldon Lettich who wrote Rambo 3 and he directed Van Damme films. He said, it's a pretty damn good movie. He also says, well, I've heard from people that Rambo 3 is their favorite. I've never heard that from anybody except, I think, Fabio here on YouTube. But I love Rambo 3 to death. I mean, it's my second favorite. But I've never heard anyone else say Rambo 3 is the best. I'd love to hear more of that because I love Rambo. My favorite is Rambo 2, but, you know, I'm just Sheldon Lettich just said nice things about Rambo 3. That was cool for a change. And then he talks about Bloodsport. Eric Roberts, he tells a little bit about Best of the Best. I disagree with Eric on this. He said Best of the Best 2 is okay. And he said 3 and 4 aren't very good. I think Best of the Best 2 and 3 are better than the first one. Now, I don't mind the first one, but I think Best of the Best 2 and 3 are better. That's just my opinion, Eric. Sorry. The Cynthia Rothrock, Women in Action, Long Kiss Goodnight, Shane Black brings that up. Tango and Cash. This is one of the few times where they actually did a little bit of info on a film, because no one really talks about Tango and Cash. So you get a little bit of info about how, like, was it John Peters? Like, one of the producers, he wanted, like, you know those big construction vehicles at the end of Tango and Cash? The guy wanted, like, 12 of them. Our heroes would go up against, like, 12 of them, but there was no money for that. And about how the director got sacked with, like, 2 weeks to go. That's the stuff that was the most interesting to me. Yes, I want to know more about this. So, like, the stuff at Tango and Cash. See, that's what I wished out of a documentary like this, is like the films no one really talks about. They need more dirt or more info, more stuff on it. But that's not the case. And honestly, that's why I never really looked forward to these type of documentaries, because I know they don't have the time or the whatever to go that in depth. And it's like, well, it's fun to watch on the visual level with all these people interviewed, but it wasn't anything I wanted to buy for 30, 40, 50 bucks like they were selling on Kickstarter Indiegogo. I'm like, I'll watch it, but I don't care to own it, because, you know, the taste lasts for a little bit and then goes away very quickly. So then when they go in the 90s, they go into T2, a little bit Universal Soldier, Last Action Hero, Street Fighter, True Lies, Speed, Matrix. They have David J. Moore, and I'm sorry, I'm just not a fan of this guy. He wrote that book, The Good, the Tough, the Deadly. That was the action book I bought and wasted my money on. That, I'm like, oh cool, it's going to talk about action films. But then he just leaves certain films for whatever reason. Oh no, for his reason being, well, Bruce Willis is not an action star, and Kurt Russell's not an action star, and some of these people are not action stars. Because in order to be an action star, you have to be some kind of bodybuilder or athlete, or whoever. I mean, Stallone, I guess, with boxing with Rocky, which, I mean, I don't know if that counts, but okay. Okay, David. And like, he'll have a franchise where he'll talk about the first one, he'll talk about the third one, but not the second film. I'm like, okay, so we got an action movie book, but you don't have Die Hard. And be like, well, what more can you say about Die Hard? But it's about being comprehensive. And then, okay, if you're not even going to incorporate Die Hard, how many much lesser films are not in it because of these certain rules that you injected into your book, which I did not know until after buying it, and if I would have known, I would not have bought it. I would have saved my money. But he talks about how he saw ICU, and I guess the audience hated it, and he called the movie junk. I'm like, you know what? ICU is better than your fucking book. That's just my opinion. But hey, he has a right to his opinion, just have a right to my opinion. That's the whole hypocritical world of it all. He thinks ICU is junk. I like it. I think the fucking book you made is junk. That's my opinion. It was childish. You're right. I'm a child at heart. What can I say? I'm a child at heart. For good and for bad. Mostly bad. I do think throughout it that I think Scott Adkins and Michael Jai White were the best interviewees. Especially Scott Adkins. The Scott Adkins, you felt his passion, you felt his love, and also I liked a lot of what he said about how much he hated Shaky Cam when they mentioned the Bourne films, and I didn't got more of, like, he is a big fan of this stuff. And yeah, there's a lot of movies they don't talk about that's like, again, you don't really go into much Van Damme or Chuck Norris, or, like, they mention them, but Dolph Lundgren gets put out to pasture. Dolph Lundgren is really never mentioned. No Punisher, which is funny because you have Mark Goldblatt, which is why, okay, you got Steven D'Souza, so you don't talk about Street Fighter. You have Mark Goldblatt, but you're not going to talk about the Punisher? Okay. No, well, Universal Soldier, I guess. He's in that, and they talk a little bit about Universal Soldier. But not Red Scorpion, not Punisher, not I Come in Peace. Like, at the end credits, you hear Matthias Hughes talk a little bit about it, about how he got the part. But it's not even part of the actual documentary. It's part of, like, the little end credits. So, I don't know, there's a lot of famous ones they don't bring up, let alone the lesser ones. Like, they don't, Jess Beatman is never mentioned. Jeff Wincott is never mentioned. No Jeff Speedman, no Jeff Wincott, no Gary Daniels. And that'd be the stuff that would be most interesting, like, about those films, or about, like, PM Entertainment, which did a shit of action films in the 90s. Like, let's talk about PM Entertainment. No, that's never mentioned. And yeah, I did it. It's already 2 hours and 20 minutes. What more can you do? But again, that's sort of my mindset of doing this in the first place. What is your point in doing this? Okay, it's flashy, it's fun editing, nice to sit down and watch. But did I really learn anything? Not really. It was fun to watch, to be fair. If you love these kind of films and you're not critical like I am, it's worth a watch. It's fun, but I don't really take any lasting stuff with me from it. I can't help it. That's just how I am. I can't change who I am. But yeah, it's worth a lot. I mean, if you type in the title on Google or on Dailymotion, you'll find it to watch. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes. And again, if you like action films, action heroes, it's a fun watch. I mean, it's cool to at least see Cynthia Rothrock and to see Scott Adkins and to see Vernon Wells, like these people interviewed. I think that's really the best part of it. as a documentary, I want to learn a lot of stuff I didn't know, and you're not really going to get that. And then there's a lot of films they don't talk about, and they completely overstep, or they kind of put down a little bit, and just not my cup of tea. But Predator 2 doesn't get mentioned. Well, one guy mentions he didn't mind it, and that was like during the end credits. But so that's what I mean. So there's a lot of stuff. It's like, okay, well, yeah, it is what it is. But like I said, it's stuff like this why I don't really seek out documentaries of this nature. I'm more into like Jodorowsky's Dune, The Death of Superman Lives, like that type of documentary where it's centered on one thing, especially something that was never made. Because I'd be, I'm one of those guys. I want to see as comprehensive as possible. So I'm a hard guy to please. What can I say? That's what she said. So thanks for watching. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.